Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Fixing Busy Season webinar that we're bringing to you with Sage in partnership with Sage and BaCo Tech. We're really excited to have you here. I am your host. My name is Rafael Casas. I'm the Senior Manager of the Sage Account Solutions team at Sage. I have over 15 years of finance and accounting consulting and advisory experience, working in building and designing and implementing business critical applications for SMBs and enterprise companies across North America, South America, Europe, and Africa, and I'm so excited to be here. We at Sage in this partnership, we always strive to serve the accounting profession with innovation, technology, and empowerment. In this mission to serve the profession, we have built a comprehensive ecosystem that will provide support in different areas of your business outside of our world-class Sage Business Cloud accounting technology, providing vital services such as digital marketing and SEO, robotic process automation, AP automation, client service, advisory services, SMB, lending and funding, HR solutions, professional development and education, and many more. With the spirit of that vision, we have partnered in this webinar with BaCo Tech to introduce some innovative technology to the accounting profession. So I'd like to introduce to you our presenters from BaCo Tech. Before we get into the agenda, I want to introduce to you Ford Baker, who's a CPA and co-founder and CEO of BaCo Tech and BaCo Group. He has over 30 years experience in public accounting, both in tax and audit. Since 1998, he has owned his own practice, and at the beginning of 2020, he handed the day-to-day operations to Joe Abisamis, and Ford now runs BaCo Tech full-time. Joe Abisamis is a CPA with more than 15 years experience working in both large and small firms. At the beginning of 2020, he moved to Dallas to become the tax manager at BaCo Group as well and help develop the technology workflow we'll be discussing today. So Ford and Joe are both extremely passionate about making sustainable and impactful improvements to the public accounting profession and industry, helping CPAs improve the way they do their business and the way they approach their work-life balance. So before we get into the agenda here, we're going to actually talk quickly about some of the housekeeping items. So CPA credit, I wanted to remind everyone, if you're seeking CPA, we'll be able to offer that for Texas. We'll be doing the polling questions throughout this webinar. You can use the chat on the Q&A section on the right-hand side of this webinar. If you could, please just type in where you're tuning in from, just so if you have any issues with the sound or visuals, please definitely put it on there. And we definitely want you to participate and just to have any questions you have, please feel free to do so. We have a Q&A at the very end, but we'll be able to have a look and help you there as well. So within the full agenda, we'll look at the introductions that we just did, the background and idea for BaCo Tech. Our next pieces here of the agenda, if we want to bring up all the areas of the agenda. Workflow differences and obstacles for CPAs, how a standardized workflow like BaCo Tech technology can impact your firm. We'll then go over a demo to see what this technology and innovation looks like with hands-on experience from Joe and Ford. And then we'll do a live Q&A as well. And again, so if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those on the chat. If you need anything from us, please feel free to throw that on the chat. And with that, I'll introduce you and hand it over to the man of the hour, Ford Baker.
Thanks so much, Rafael. I am really excited about this opportunity, what we're able to share with y'all today. It's really pretty exciting. My background, real quickly, I'm a CPA. Obviously, I started off at Deloitte. I ended up with a large local firm. I started off in audit. I made audit manager at the local firm. As my individual practice grew, my own personal clients, they were all tax related. By the time I hung my shingle, I was all tax, and so that became what I've been doing for the past 22 years. Started the practice in 1998. I got a chance to work on a large problem where we needed a large project where we needed to consolidate a lot of QuickBooks files for a client that was starting a exit strategy. And so they actually had 43 QuickBooks files that we needed to consolidate, and I needed to get ready for the audit, for that first audit. And I needed to build a workflow that I could make PVCs from, I could have lead schedules, I could do all of that, and get ready for the tax return at the same time. I'm a local firm. I'm too small to kind of start that project over after I got started. So I was kind of building one cohesive piece to work with it. And we had success. It grew to 70 QuickBooks files, and I could prepare consolidated financials out of those 70 QuickBooks files in about 30 minutes. And that's after you post the last entry where I was opening 30 QuickBooks files. And so I knew then that I had a pretty good idea, and I started to wonder, could I adopt that for other clients, and could I scale that to my entire firm? So we hired a CTO with a goal of being to do what we did and be able to go gap to tax by the time we got to tax season this year, and work from we had a full accrual set of financials with multiple entities that were preparing 3 different tax returns. We had state apportionment issues, and we wanted to go without opening the client's accounting software or the tax return software, be able to push all of that, make all of the adjustments to go cash-based S-Corp tax filings. And so we were successful with that piece. And we have this startup up and going now. We brought in Joe Abasamas, and I'll let Joe tell you a little bit about his history and what he's done now.
Yeah, hi, I'm Joe Abasamas. I jumped around a couple different firms. Most recently, I was at a 150-person firm with about 3 different offices, 19 different partners. I was slated to be number 20, but the more the firm grew through mergers and acquisitions, the more complex it became to be. I wanted more of a simplified workflow system, but there were two different trial balance systems, 3 different tax research softwares. Audit had their own workflow, tax had their own workflow, and essentially with 19 different partners, we had 19 different workflows. And like I mentioned before, I had a big desire to innovate and simplify my life, but and that's why I left to join and manage Ford's team.
So thanks, Joe. And this opportunity gave us a chance to really look at the technology change like I've never really been able to before, because I'm focused on that piece now, and to see really what's coming. We know everybody knows that change is coming, and that change is they're looking at AI, they're looking at outsourcing, they're looking at knowledge-based programming like ours. They're looking at a lot of different things, and even though we saw some big failures this year, like Scale Factor, they ended up closing down, and there was some issues there. That doesn't mean that the problem for us isn't going to go away. We're going to find people are looking for more and more opportunities to find more efficient ways to put last year's numbers on last year's forms and last year's financial statements. So we've got to get out of that. We got to get ahead of that. And to do that, we've got to value our existing clients, our existing customers over our existing process. And that's really became evident in most of our memory. If you think back to the early 90s, the Blockbuster was dominating the home entertainment industry, and they were very committed to their sticks and bricks process of you going there, getting a DVD, buying some candy, and that's the way you were going to watch your movies. They didn't react well to the changes that came, and Netflix ends up with it. They were at their top in 1994, and by in 2004, they were at the top of the revenue stream they'd ever had, and within 10 years they were completely gone, and they lost out to Netflix. Came in, most blame primarily what they were doing, but at the time, remember, they were mailing us DVDs, and so they had spent millions, if not billions of dollars on a system that would automate delivering us a DVD to our house, and almost in no time there was another change where we could stream and push a button and watch something and not have to wait for the mail. And so they, unlike what we talked about a second ago, they valued their customers over the process, and they pivoted. They changed what they were doing. They looked and said, okay, we're going to take this, and you look at what they did, and this last year they had 160 Emmy nominations. So they're not only sending us DVDs, they're providing us original content. They changed everything about themselves because they got out in front with their customers and followed their customers' demand. That's what we have to do as an industry. That's the important thing. We've got to adapt, and we've got to adopt. And we have to adapt the new changes in the industry. We have to adapt to changes in technology. We have to quit being so resistant to cloud-based programs and things like that, and be willing to embrace the connectivity that we get there. And we've also got to be able to adopt firm standards. What Joe described was, I worked at larger firms as well, 19 different workflows. It's just not a way that you can work. You have to have one standard way of doing the process, and it's got to be something that can work for audit and tax. if they're both gonna happen inside the same firm. And so we got to be able to create those standards. And so that's what I saw. And I really, in this process of playing with that spreadsheet and building those financials, I started to see that I was fixing things, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was fixing or why I thought maybe busy season would go away. And I realized I really didn't know what the core reason that busy season is busy. So Raphael, I think this is where you step in.
Yeah, so we're actually gonna, Ford, thank you so much for that information. So we're actually gonna jump into our first polling question here, and you can, again, put it on the live event Q&A chat. Why do you think busy season is busy? So we'd love to get your feedback in there. We'll give you about a minute to go to put your information in there, if you can put some chat. But actually, to the point that you were making, Ford, with regards to adapting and adopting and even bringing up the mention of scale factor, it's interesting that today or this morning there was an article that Acuity actually has just acquired or adopted, brought on 6 folks from the scale factor team. So, again, it may have just been some infrastructure there of how they set that up, and that's where maybe Acuity is picking up where that business ultimately had failed. So again, that's an interesting thing that mention that you brought up that I think fits well into this. So
just because they failed last time does not mean that they're going to quit, because they can look at what we do and know that there's got to be a better way to do it.
Exactly. Well, so one of some of the answers here we've got are, clients are some of the answers that are coming up here that are making busy season busy. So what we'll have it bring it over here back to Ford, and Ford, you can kind of go through some of these 5 scenarios or pieces that you commonly see as why busy season is busy.
So either through research or whatever, we found that client issues was the number one on the list, especially when it came from CPAs. It wasn't just because somebody goes out and buys accounting software doesn't make them an accountant. We all realize that. I'm not sure everybody else does, but the idea that clients create some problems because they're just not, this isn't what they do, is going to be one of the, is the far and away number one. My answer was time compression. I'm going to get everything in the middle of February, best case scenario, right? And then I'm going to have to get the balances then for December 31st. And I've really got about 60 days that everything's going to come across my desk for pass-through entities that I'm going to have a chance to get addressed. Another one is inconsistent formats. So right now, 84 different vendors are out there selling accounting software, and there's over 20 versions of some vendors that are supporting right now. So we're going to get different reports, different formats for all of those different accounting platforms, and then we're going to have clients have their own chart of accounts. So everything's going to be formatted a little bit differently. Redundancies end up being one of the ones I really enjoyed hearing people talk about. If I do a tax plan at June 30th, the balances at June 30th have nothing to do with the balances at December 31st. So whatever work I do on the balances at June 30th, I got to redo at the end of the year at December 31st. And that redundancy issue, hearing all the different methods that came up, we seemed to redo everything. And I agreed with all of them. I couldn't even think about all the time we did it. And finally, access. We're going to get information in so many different ways. We're going to get emails, we're going to get faxes, people are going to print things. It's a million different things that we get, even if we log on directly. We just don't have a central place or central way to get the information. And so all but one fit into that. We'd be interested to hear if there's any other things that don't fit into that scenario. But that's what we determined over time. But I asked myself, are any of these the problem? Which one is the problem? I think a lot of people said, hey, the time factor, I just assumed that was a given, and they didn't give it back. But the idea that any one of those was a central problem, I really didn't think it was. I mean, we know the industry is broke. We know there's some issues. We have the highest mortality rate of any industry. I didn't know if you guys were aware of that. It's more dangerous than window washers and skydiving instructors. So think about that. It's more dangerous to do your neighbor's tax return than it is to jump out of airplanes or hang off the side of a building. And I know that because that's me on the left of both of those pictures. In 2012, I weighed close to 400 pounds. I made a lot of, I've done this a million times, I choked up. I made a lot of changes in my life to end up losing a lot of weight. I made a lot of changes in the practice. By 2014, I actually rode my bicycle from Canada to Mexico down the Pacific Coast Highway. So obviously I had time to do things. I did make a lot of changes in my practice. I got rid of all my problem clients. I got rid of all my problem employees. I looked to really simplify what we were doing. We were going to work on business tax returns and their owners. So I didn't do any freestanding 1040 work that wasn't involved with an owner. I didn't do anything outside of my skill set, which was businesses and their owners. And so, and I really thought to simplify a lot of processes. I went to value billing where I billed one time a year, and I combined that with my engagement letter process. I really wanted to get down to where I could touch it once and solve everything. So we weren't going to file extensions. We were going to touch it once, and that was going to be what happened. But as I got into tax season, I couldn't actually touch it once. I couldn't actually do it because the problem we ran into was the time factor. Everything's going to come across my desk and the clients aren't going to send it to me when they're supposed to. And it just became a headache. And I am pathologically lazy. In fact, I'll work 1 million hours to keep myself from doing something I had to do this year. I just became really obsessed with this idea I had and what it was fixing. And I started to realize that what we've got is a workflow issue. And it is all centralized around what that workflow issue looks like. And if we talk about a real process with that, what something looks like, and we go to our favorite manufacturing that all of us accountants have heard about, we're going to make a widget, right? We're going to get raw materials in and we're going to take a series of steps to build our widget, however many steps it takes to build the widget, get our final step, and we've got a widget. And we're going to follow that procedure over and over again, right? We're going to keep doing that same thing so that when we start repeating it, we can get faster at it. We can add automation. We can add quality control. We'll get better and better and better by doing the exact same thing over and over again. We get really, really good at it. So then that led me to ask, well, do CPAs have a workflow? I think Raphael's going to jump in again here.
Yeah, it's great. So the next, again, the polling question, I see some of those answers coming in. We'll do that. This is the next polling question. So there isn't going to be really a poll that'll pop up on your screen per se. Just put your answers in the chat. There's about maybe a 5 to 10 second delay. So just wanted to make sure, because I know I saw some of those questions come in. But the next question we had here from open polling question is, do CPAs have a workflow? Is it a standardized workflow both for audit and tax? So if you could go ahead and put in some of your answers of what you think this pertains, or your sentiments on this particular question. So we'll give you about 30 seconds here to go ahead and figure out what your answer is, and then Ford will go ahead and talk about what the answer was that he had come upon.
Well, and I have an answer. You don't have to agree with me or not, but my answer is yes. It sounds a lot like what Joe's answer is. Joe, what is a CPA firm's workflow? Real easy.
It's really whatever we did last year.
Right? That's what we do. It's the thing we ask. What did we do last year? I bet you I would stop staff from coming in and asking me questions unless they could tell me what I did last year, because it's the first thing I'm going to ask is, what did we do last year? And that issue is it really drives our whole workflow. And so sorry.
So with Ford, some of the answers that are actually coming in here, just so you can get an idea of, they have a workflow in tax received client data. There are a couple that say no. Workflows are usually different by service line. Most have a workflow, but most are flawed. So these are things that you'll talk about, inefficiencies.
Yeah, we get the answer back, and almost every single one of them starts with "it depends." So if we go back to that. And it depends on what format we get in, what format the records come in, if it's paper or if it's electronic, right? Or even if it's electronic, is it going to be a PDF? Is it going to be Excel? Are we going to get things? I still can't believe people still get things by fax a lot. And so we get a lot of different methodology that we get this information in. And that goes back to that raw material provisioning thing that was on there. Can you imagine if you were building widgets and you couldn't tell when they were coming in, what format they were going to come in, what shape, what quality, all of that stuff? You couldn't make a widget. You couldn't do any of that if you had no idea what the raw materials look like for your process. And so one of the things that we had, when I went through the weight loss journey, that I took into that and asked myself, that I ask myself is I don't want to look back at what did we do last year anymore. I want to ask what can we do better this year. I want to look forward and not look back. And because of that, we actually did standardize a workflow. And so this is going to be a little bit out of order, but it's a spoiler alert because we want everybody to stay interested. We standardized a workflow, and it had a significant impact on the firm. And I'm going to let Joe talk about what he saw first year working in the workflow during a pandemic. What were the things you saw, Joe?
Yeah, utilizing a brand new team who wasn't here last year and have no history with any of the clients, we were able to increase efficiency in all of our projects. Our initial project that we worked on was originally 480 hours. We ended up it being 130, so we saved at least 300 hours on it. We also increased our full-time equivalent revenue to full-time equivalent ratio. My previous firms that I worked for, who were consulted by Boomer Consulting and Prime Global, they had a full-time equivalent of roughly 159K that they were shooting for. With less people than we've ever had, we've had 300K, and also, again, a brand new team. We also had increased opportunities. As of the end of this month, we'll be done with all of our tax returns for the rest of the year, which is, I've never had this problem. And so we literally saved 3 months of work. And my staff's asking me, oh, well, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to work on this year's taxes this year. A lot of customers who come to us really want proactive CPAs versus reactive. And the reality of it is a lot of CPAs, they try and say that, hey, we want to be your trusted advisor, but you can't be a trusted advisor if you're constantly looking at prior year stuff. So what we're doing is we're allowing this workflow solution allowed us to match our workflow to the client's activity without having to do the back and forth that goes on with traditional CPA firms.
So, Joe, I'm going to take this chance to ask you a question then. So you've been doing this 12, 13 years. You used what did we do last year workflow for those 12 or 13 years. You know how that impacted you. This year, you didn't have that, but you moved from Los Angeles to Dallas in the middle of tax season, in the middle of a pandemic. But things got shut down. I know you've driven back and forth from LA during this time 3 times because you didn't want to fly. Which one of the things do you think had a bigger impact on your getting tax returns prepared? The what did we do last year workflow, or the pandemic?
I'd definitely say is following whatever I did the last 13 years. Yeah, it's the first.
So that's a crazy statement. But when John and I talked about that, we really he didn't think twice. He started to answer the question before I even got done. And we can see it. We're done. I finished 50 tax returns between August 15th and September 15th last year with less people, and me being more or less full-time in the technology company. I'm coming in and helping Joe on a couple of the larger returns, but by and large, I'm working for the tech company. We're done. So it's a huge difference. And as we realized that workflow issue was the first thing we got asked when we talked to people was, well, what does the CPA firm's workflow look like? What makes it so bad? And so most people would say, well, that's Joe sitting over here, and he's got different clients in different industries and different sizes. And so all of that stuff is the biggest, is the thing that complicates it for us. We have to be familiar with so many different things. But in reality, all of those clients talk to us in 84 different accounting software packages from 84 different accounting software vendors. And all the versions, that isn't just the only difference, though. What we see there, we're going to have clients that send us a backup of what they've got, and we're going to have to make sure we have that software installed on our server, and then we're going to dump everything to Excel. We're going to have clients that email us directly the reports in Excel, or they're going to email them in a PDF. We're going to have clients that are going to have cloud access, and we're going to log onto their cloud and get everything out in Excel. We're going to have clients that have a remote server. We're going to jump onto their server, dump everything into Excel. We're going to have clients that get on their computer, print everything out to FedEx. We're going to then scan that in, bring it into our workflow. We're going to have clients that print it out, jump in a car, come down, meet with us. We'll take notes on this piece of paper, scan it in, get it into our workflow. And then we got clients that we're going to drive out to their place and sit down at their computer, log on, get everything done, and then load it all to PDF so we can get it in the workflow. That's just starting tax returns, getting the data, and we're talking about tax returns here, but it's essentially the same problems with audits. But so if we start punching things in our trial balance, we got questions and ideas, fixed asset additions that we need to do, and we'll email those things out to clients. Clients will email us back the answers, and then we will punch everything into the actual tax prep software and file the tax return electronically. And we'll repeat that for all of the clients. Now, that's a kind of organized way of looking at it. But if we were to talk about, without a pandemic, of course, 2019 and 2020, what does it look like to prepare tax returns for 2019 in a kind of a standard year? In the first 4 months of 2019, our clients are spending money together. They're all working on 29 activity, but we're not talking to them about 2019, right? We're talking about 2018. We're getting tax returns done. We get into the summer, maybe get a little bit of planning done, but it really isn't until the end of the year that things start to pick up a lot and we start to get some ideas for some plans. Once the year breaks, then we're going to start to see that information happen that we did, but we've really got no control when it comes in, how it comes in. So we're going to be sending out emails, trying to find out information, getting louder and louder, trying to get the answers. Clients are focused on 2020 activity now. They don't need 2019. There's a pandemic going on, and it may slow down a little bit in the summer, but it's all the way up till September 15th. We're still all posting for last year, finally get it all done. That's kind of the chaos that we actually see. And so you ask, is that a workflow, and how much does that cost a firm? So I can answer that question, right? Because Joe just told us that we have a lack of efficiency in our projects. I think he said 300 hours on the first project we did. That was the staff person's first job that she'd ever done in public accounting. So we had that kind of efficiency. We had the difference in billable full-time equivalents we saw. We had 3 months of time that we were working on last year's tax returns the previous year. We had a frustrated and stressed staff. We all deal with that. We have filing deadline surprises for our clients. We got high turnover and no balance for CPAs. So clearly the industry is sick. We've got some problems in our industry, and we've got to figure out how to address that. And so what I figured out, though, was that it's a lot like the flu season. And if we go back and look, if you don't fix flu season, then all you can do is deal with the side effects that come along with the flu. Now I've lost the word for the
symptoms.
Symptoms, thank you. All we can do is deal with the symptoms. And what I found out was that the issues we talked about before that everybody types in, those are actually symptoms of the problem. They're not actually the problem. If we solve the symptoms, then if we solve the problem, we'll fix the symptoms. And so I pulled up a little description that was on there that I kind of buzzed through earlier, but Raphael, you got your last participation question here.
Yes, thank you, Ford. So this is our last, kind of polling participation question. Again, there's about a 10-second delay, so go ahead and put that on the chat. So we're looking at these 5 pieces here of client issues, time compression or the calendar, inconsistent formats, access, redundancy. So we're going to look at what are the common denominators between all these 5 areas, and it looks like balance is the common denominator here. And so with that said, there's a couple things as people are chiming in of looking at this particular area of what do you think outside of balances, or if you think balances is yes or no, the commonality of what you're seeing in your firms, but also the proactive piece where Ford and Joe were really talking about being proactive, being that business advisor to your clients is so incredibly important right now, more than anything. Getting through automating monotonous tasks and being innovative in that way, and allowing the innovation and the advisory services to be in the forefront for that really, really important human interaction. So with that, the balances, are you saying, Ford, that balances are the actual root to this cause?
Yeah, the balances was the thing I noticed when I sat down and had to finally figure out what I was fixing. I noticed in the middle of all of the problems that I had with the word balance, financial statements, these static reports with a static balance that we were waiting on till year end. And without that, I couldn't think, why in the world am I going to do, what am I do without balances? What would I do with, how could I do the job without balances? A lot of people were asking the same thing. But really think about the static balances that we get. We've already described we don't know what format, we don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know if they're going to be correct. In fact, the only thing that in a whole list that we go through balances that we can say about balances every single solitary time is that they will never be complete, right? We can't actually do the job without the underlying transactions to update fixed asset schedules, to do things like prepare a statement of cash flows. We're going to need the individual transactions. And of course, everybody says, well, what do we want all the transactions? And my answer back is, well, I do, because if you gave me all the transactions, I could calculate the balances, right? It would be complete, and I would have, I could get that. In fact, I create a report in every one of my accounting files that I call all the transactions before I realized that a transaction-based workflow was the fix, because this I could dump out to Excel one time and have all the data I needed real rapidly, and I could run filters, I could do all kinds of things. And that's kind of the cool thing that our platform does, BaCo Tech. It speaks accounting, right? It takes all those transactions and creates a living trial balance for us to work with at the end of the year. But this living trial balance is transaction-based, not balance-based. So we're not waiting to get an answer that we're bringing in static into our workflow. We're bringing in a fluid answer that's working and changing as the clients do. And that's what we speak accounting means, right? It gathers all the transactions from your client's accounting real time, which eliminates the client issues every night. So it eliminates time compression. And guess what? Transactions are easy to work with. Debits on the left, credits on the right. So it eliminates that formatting thing we're talking about. In fact, Microsoft Nav and QuickBooks Desktop, the field names for a journal entry are identical except for the account name versus account ID. So it's real easy to stack up transactions on top of each other and create consolidated reports or combine them together into one workflow. And that gives you and your clients consolidated, if needed, financial statements for every entity they own under one login for you, which addresses the access, so you really can touch it once. And if you think back on that productivity tip we talked about, touch it once, as I said, and redundancy, the balances at June 30th, that mid-year tax plan, the balances at June 30th don't have anything to do with the balances at December 31st, but all the transactions that make up those balances at June 30th, they're part of the transactions at December 31st. And so if I make an adjustment in a transaction-based workflow, I've already made it for year end. And just like with online banking, which also uses a transaction-based workflow, I can bring a transaction in and I can teach it what to do, right? So I can bring in something from the bank and say, if it's to Staples, code it to office expense. Well, part of our patent is that we have a tax significant account. And so if something like prepaids is on a cash basis taxpayer would be a prepaid, would be a tax significant account, and we can create an alert that says, hey, you have a transaction in tax significant account. Do you want to reverse it? Yes. Do we want to remember to reverse it next time? Yes. Do you have a default account we use if the offset is to the balance sheet or the so like they write a check and code it to prepaids? And so yeah, insurance, whatever you put in that, then now I'm creating a real-time workflow that's producing real-time taxable income. And so I really can touch it once. And one of the questions we got asked was, well, are you sure nobody's done this? Because you guys have done so much so fast. I mean, I literally hired David last April, and here we are 13, 14 months later, and we've already pushed things into tax returns and going to market. And it's because, one, to find something that the market was ready for, it was really easy, because if you think about, go back to 1992. So we get in our time machine, we go back and we look at Peachtree from 1992. That's what you're seeing on the screen. You can see there was about 7 things we could do in accounts payable besides create the GL entry. We batch process that at the end of the month, and that's the way we handled everything. If we fast forward 28 years now and come in, and we're now Cloud 50, look at all the different functionality that's in there, all the information we have, everything that we can automate, all the things that we can do, all based on the power of that individual transaction. We don't post things any longer in a batch processing. We post it real time so we can report off it. We can do things like that. But we've also got the power of that transaction. Behind all of those really cool features is just a journal entry. It's just a max that it's making to create these different items in here. Now let's go back in time and let's talk about year end when the CPA comes in. This is the only time we're really worried about, right? We got the balance sheet, income statement, trial balance, and general ledger. That's what we got 28 years ago. Now we fast forward, and what do we get? Balance sheet, income statement, profit and loss in this case, general ledger, trial balance. We get the same reports we did. We just get to go get them ourselves now, right? We have access, so we can manually go and gather them, and we can get it in Excel. By golly, in 28 years, that's the only real thing that's changed in our workflow. And we've missed out on all the power of the transaction, what that looks like, and what a living trial balance provides. The last thing we'll do before we jump into the demo is just kind of give you a difference of what the workflow would look like. Again, talking about 2019 tax returns, preparing them in 2019 and 2020 in with a transaction-based workflow and BaCo Tech at the middle. So the accounting software, we still got all the different versions, but once the year starts, we're gathering those transactions and we can see, oh, we got fixed asset additions and trends are going this direction. We got some ideas and some plans. And now we're talking about 2019 information in 2019. Our clients are a little bit more responsive. Maybe we have a tax plan, an urgent matter comes up. We need to look at some things. Oh, we can save taxes. This isn't how much I owe from last year. This is how much I'm going to owe next year. So now they're willing to sit down and talk with us. Meanwhile, we're delivering online financial statements. We have a command center where I can post adjustments back to the accounting file from my command center. We've got a real workflow that we're working with so that we get into tax season the next year. The tax returns go out like bank statements. We're clicking a button and pushing them in. That's what a transaction-based workflow looks like for us, and what we saw. And in our first year, obviously, we're not on a beach anywhere. Everything seems to be kind of shut down. So we're working on 2020 tax returns instead. Maybe next year we'll go to the beach, but that's what the workflow looks like. And what that gives us, and what that gives a CPA firm, is it allows us, by fixing the problem, it treats the symptoms of client issues, time compression, formatting issues, access, redundancy, and it impacts a firm that we can communicate with clients without opening email. We can update returns, fixed assets, and other entries without opening tax prep software. We can make or suggest adjustments without opening a ERP or a client's accounting software. We can automate and post tax adjustments real time, one time. And we can project taxable income without opening a prior return. We can fix busy season, and that's what we're out to do. So I'm going to jump into the demo here and go through these. I'm going to let Raphael walk you through what we're going to do while I pivot on the screens here in the background.
Perfect. Thank you, Ford. So as Ford gets adjusted here and getting the demo done, we're going to look at the few points within the BaCo Tech demo. Again, there's going to be just basically the discussion of connecting or onboarding the firm onto the middleware, the platform here, client groupings, reporting for combined entities, journal entries, adjustments back to the accounting packages that you may be using within your firm, and then tax significant accounts. So again, please utilize the live Q&A chat so we can go and answer anything real time. Also, there's a 10 to 15 second delay, so we'll get to you and we'll have all of our information at the end of this as well and have a full Q&A. But with that said, I'll go ahead and kick it back to Ford if you're ready, Ford. It looks like you're on mute, Ford. We can't hear you yet.
Sorry about that. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir. We can see your screen.
So we're a fictitious, for our demo, we've got a fictitious accounting firm that prepares all of the tax returns for all of the professional sports franchises. And so what we do when we onboard somebody is we come into a firm center, we bring in all the data into a firm center, and so that we can start grouping things together. We pull that out of your tax software, the information out of your tax software to set this up. And we look at what the owner's name is, or the owner's EIN. So if I type in Jerry, you can see I get the Chicago teams with Jerry Reinsdorf, and I get the Cowboys with Jerry Jones. And so if I type in Jerry Jones, I've now filtered down on everything that the Cowboys own. That's my fictitious client we're looking at. And you can see I've got the Cowboys Charities Foundation and a football club and team gear all already aggregated together. So this workflow, when we integrate with your tax software, we figure out where it's going to go and who we're going to combine together. And so I've already got the users set up. So Jerry's in here. If I've got his email in here, I can hit this plus button and add him as a user, send out so he can see the combined financial statements we had up on the screen a second ago. Now I've also got that Jerry Jones owns Arkansas Razorback football. And so I look at this and I go over and see on those owners that Jerry owns this with Suey Pig. And so if I want Arkansas football to be combined with the Cowboys, I can drag and drop that in there. And now if we go over here and look, Arkansas Razorback football is in here. And so, but really, Suey Pig doesn't really need to get logged in and see that. We can filter it, but that's a separate entity. It's not going to be anything we combine at the end of the year. So I can take it back out if I accidentally put it in, and out it goes. And so I've got that, and that's creating online consolidated financial statements. I'm going to hit it. It's a good idea to do this process first, because once we have all the data in and you start moving the combined groups around, you're moving a lot of data. And so we don't want to do that. We're a lot of connections to data. So the first thing we do is onboard and make sure that you've got this all set up right. We got our C Corps that I can't tell as much about ownership in. So I'm going to hit leave without unsaved changes, because I don't want to save anything here. And I'm going to go into the benchmark center and see that I can see a balance sheet and an income statement across all the clients. I can scroll down here and see, okay, I've got professional fees, and I'm going to look at this, and there's $4,300,000 in professional fees. I click on this, and now I'm looking across every one of the entities, all the professional fees that that came in. I can toggle a column if I want to, and I can get rid of account name, I can get rid of type, I can get rid of whatever I want to. I can look at these and see I've got on for the Charities Foundation, I've got $6,108.16 in professional fees here, and I'm gonna make a journal entry for this, because that should be in marketing. So I can hit create the journal entry, and that's a Cowboys charity, and I'm gonna move to marketing, and I'm gonna post this on June 30th, 2020, because that's when the first one was, and I'm gonna add my first line, and so I will pick up my marketing and drop in my debit. And we're working with the developers on what these, and the beta users on what we want our journal entries to look like. So we've got kind of a working model right now. We envision this looking a lot more like a standard journal entry. And one of the things to notice, actually, what the first change we talked about was moving this panel over as far as we can to the left, so that, and increasing the transparency, so that when I'm posting a journal entry, I can actually see the data behind it, instead of getting a whole screen that obscures the data. I want to be able to see this, but I want to be able to post this back against professional fees, if I could type. So, and I'm going to credit that in there and hit create, and I'm going to post that journal entry. And so it's now opened up QuickBooks, posted that entry, pulled the entry back across, and I do have to close the file and look at it, but I can go back into professional fees, and I refresh that report and look over here and see that I've got a $6,188.16 journal entry inside my accounting platform already posted from here. So I can post in and see real activity. And the other piece we'll talk about, if anybody wants to see like us add fixed assets to tax software, or what it looks like to update a tax return, that's probably more involved, or what it looks like to connect to an accounting file. That's a little more involved than we can do in a short demo. And to qualify for CPE, we had to make sure we had some content up front. So we'll have some contact information here at the end for you to be able to reach back. But we'll talk real briefly about the what the tax flow looks like and what we described before. So I'm going to look at clients, and I'm going to pick the Cowboys football as one, and I'm going to go into the account. So when we bring somebody on, the first thing we do is go through their ERP, QuickBooks, Microsoft Net, whatever, Sage, whatever platform they use, and we group everything exactly like their ERP does to create the first set of financials. Then we analyze those and create a standard set of tax leads that are going to go to your tax platform. Essentially, this ends up being a tax trial balance, but we're going to consolidate everything for you. And by coming up with a standard lead, when I have all these accounts, you can see I've got 2 things in travel expense. I've got 2 things in utilities. All these different accounts that clients could have that set up, or that the accounting software set up by default, all are brought in together, and we aggregate them together. If job supplies should be in, or professional fees, you can see earlier that I did this, and I put sorry, I put the reconciliation discrepancies in there, and if I want to move that to utilities, then all I do is drag that over, drop it into, and I've now grouped that and done that for good. I don't have to go back and do it again. And you saw that little pop-up when I actually clicked on the account and let go of it. We'll go look at prepaid expenses, and I want to create a workflow for that. And so the Cowboys are cash basis, let's pretend. And so I got the prepaid tax significant account of prepaid expenses. And is it tax significant? Yes. Do you want to reverse it automatically? Yes. Monthly reversal type. So monthly digest is an efficient way to do it. We just update that reversal entry every month into one consolidated entry. And so for things that have a lot of transactions or clients that move a lot of things in and out, it becomes a little more efficient to just create that digest instead of every single transaction. And so we say, yeah, let's do a monthly digest, and we're going to take 100% of this, and all of his is player salaries, right? So I'm going to look at players for salary, signing bonuses, and things like that. So I'm going to put it all in. I'm going to put it all in players' salaries, and next, and save. And so in the background now, it is actually going through our workflow and finding all of those prepaid adjustments and moving them to players' salaries real time. It's adjusting the beginning for the beginning balance in that account and creating a real workflow for us to be in the middle of. That's actually giving us real-time taxable income. We've got a new depreciation screen that's pretty exciting. We can kind of walk you guys through. But how terrible does this make this platform sound? I honestly just said we've got a new depreciation screen that's pretty exciting. So anyway, that's from accountants it is, and for me it really is. It's made a huge difference. We're really excited to get this chance. Thank y'all so much for your time. I know I'm about 4 minutes over than where I wanted to be, but anyway, if we can, I will hand it back to Raphael at this point.
Thank you, Ford. That's great. So I think we have we actually have quite a bit more time here left. If we wanted to go over a few other things that you wanted to talk about with regards to onboarding, security, things like that you may want to quickly discuss or go over, because I know security is a big thing that a lot of firms are really, especially as everything's being accelerated on the cloud. Outside of these pieces that we talked about, some of those things that you can talk about as far as your middleware and how not only is it this innovation allows it to be very actionable and reportable in real time, but also things like the security of the data in this middleware, and that's also important in building trust with your clients and as a firm, and again as middleware technology. So if you wanted to kind of talk about those two things quickly, the onboarding and some of the security.
And so the security, it looks like Raphael studied my demo more than I did because I left that out. He was very kind to remind me of it. So from a security standpoint, one of the things that we did was, if you notice inside I create all the transactions as we go along, but if I come back in, I look at that professional fees account again that we had up a second ago, and I go into the detail. So this is, again, across all 4 entities, and that quick. I can see that in my memos, I've got all these hashes in here. So our initial release is we didn't want to try to figure out what a social security number was or what a credit card number was. So if you put a number in the memo, if you put a number in a field, we're going to take it out. And we're going to work hard to figure out so we can know we tell the difference between a date and an account number or something like that, so that this is way more secure than the client sending us this in Excel. It's not even in here. So we can dump this to Excel. We don't have people's socials in there. We don't collect that information. We don't actually store any of the EIN information other than in a non-hashed format. So that idea is integral to our security. And another piece is that every firm that onboards is a freestanding database of their own information. And so if I'm sloppy with my passwords and things like that, and there's a compromise into our system, then unlike what we saw this year with Garmin, where the whole system goes down, that compromise is going to be at that firm only, and it's not going to be something that's spread across. So we've really tried to minimize, by taking everything to the cloud, the overall impact that something may occur by separating everything into individual pods for firm data. We can move the data in there. If I've got an audit firm and a tax firm, we can put it into two separate platforms. It's pretty portable information. So those are a couple of the ideas that we had around security. Obviously, our database, we rely on Google, which spend more money every day on security on their back end, on what they're building to keep it kind of hack-proof than we ever could. So we rely on the on Google's security and the actual platform, the underlying technologies we use to drive to secure the login process and things like that, because we just can't build something better than these big manufacturers have done, these big developers have done. So that's what we've done on developing. And as far as technology goes, I mean, as far as onboarding goes, when you actually add a client in here, and again, that might take a couple of seconds to go in, in the Firm Center, we would come in and you would come in and click on this, on the client, and click on this plus button to add a new client in here, and I can pick a client off of a list and bring it in off of whatever, depending on what tax software accounting software I have, but if I got QuickBooks Online or Sage, I pick that platform, pull in the data, and when it starts to pull in that data, it mines and looks for the EIN there to match up against where that tax return is. And so now when you onboard it, it automatically knows, oh, that client goes into the Dallas Cowboys Consolidated Group and the tax return lives right here. So I know my workflow just based on tying that together in an EIN. We kind of bury in the background. It doesn't actually display other than where the spot you get to enter it. So we try to keep that information hidden as best we can. But for connectivity purposes, but it's that simple to create those financial statements that particular way. One of the things we're really super excited about is the idea that we would know who the team owner is, right? And so I could set up a QuickBooks account and identify this team owner and say, okay, I'm going to get an account for his. I'm going to keep up with his wages, his interest and dividends. I know which one of these entities that he has, like that is a pass-through entity or not. So if I look at these, Benchmark Center, if I look at these, the profit and loss that's coming out of each one of these entities, when I start to adjust it 50% for meals, that's another tax significant account. So if I start adjusting it, I can create a real-time taxable income statement. And I know that the Cowboys charities, well, that's not a pass-through entity. And if any of these are C Corps, those aren't pass-through entities, but I know what percentage of stock he owns. I can push that information over there and create real-time taxable income by just reconciling a personal checking account and QuickBooks or whatever I can sync up with in a separate account for them. And I can look at the team owner and aggregate that together and create real-time taxable income and start to determine exactly how much tax this guy's going to owe based on activity from today. Totally different than anything we've ever done before. And it's just, it's all of those innovations that we talked about that happen in accounts payable and happen in accounting software for the rest, every other department except for the year-end tax prep guy. We got left behind. We sat on the sideline and dealt with the same thing with an advancement of Excel, and now we're jumping in. We can't come up with ideas fast enough. That's our patent was pretty long, and we're really excited about that.
So Ford, well, another thing too. So the accounting packages that you are working on with integrating is right now is Sage and then QBO as well. Can you show how do you connect to an accounting package? That's
so
one thing that
our demo data, all of the demo data is all at this point is all connected to QuickBooks Online accounts, just for ease of getting as opposed to a desktop platform. And so I can come in here to clients and I can pick I can hit plus and say yes, and I'm now going to log on to the QuickBooks Online website.
So this will automatically know what accounting system, or is there an additional configuration that needs to be done?
We would have what the platforms that we've connected to that you're working with. So right now we've connected in our old platform, and our delay right here is accessing QuickBooks. There we go. So and then you would pick that off. I'm going to.
Okay, so you at BaCo Tech will help with the integration of their particular accounting package, correct?
Right. And so we are working right now on our Sage integration. Last year we connected with QuickBooks Desktop. I built the thing around QuickBooks Desktop, but QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, we work with Microsoft Nav, and we're currently connecting, also working on NetSuite. Obviously, if you guys have clients, we spend a lot of time moving our clients off of QuickBooks Desktop application into QuickBooks Online, because the connectability is going to be through the roof, a lot easier if you get in a online platform than if we put some application on a desktop that they have to gather that they can break. They being our client issues again, that's where we can run into problems. But we have one of the alerts that says we haven't got any information this month from a client, so we know if something's broken, that we can get it reconnected. But you just don't have the problem with the online applications. And from what we've seen, so far working with the Sage cloud, but truly cloud platforms, the APIs are just like butter. It's really, really simple to work with. And that's where you're going to get the best results in being able to post things back. We can post an entry back to a desktop platform if it will let us. But you're just really going to want to push your clients. It only makes sense. All the developers are spending all of their money and all of their enhancements on that platform. So sticking with something that they're going to spend less and less money because businesses don't want to be on it, just doesn't make a lot of sense. That's the idea of adapting to the changes coming in our industry. Our businesses don't want to be, married to a desktop, and they're not really, they don't care if we like the desktop application. They want it to be easy for them. And actually now it can make it easy for us.
So one last question before we wrap up here, and from some of the Q&A things that are coming through, but we talked about data integrity for, in business rules, that's really important outside of the technical piece. But, as there's roles are set up within the accounting package, so you can apply those same roles. You have different rules, you said, user rules within here, but you also, with that said, you don't supersede or try to override any of those rules. You fall in line with the accounting package as well. So there's continuity and there's data integrity, which is all extremely important.
Right. And so if a client did not want to give us the ability to, obviously in our demo, I got the ability to post an entry back. But what we would strive to do there is, if we had a client with a controller and we wanted to make an adjustment, is that we would create the journal entry and then hand it to his login. He get an email, we got some adjustments we suggest for him. He says, okay, he looks at them and he says post. Then those entries are posted by him. He doesn't have to open the software. He doesn't have to log in or do anything. He can just look at this site and post the entries we suggest back to him. So we could hand it back to him that way. And Joe can talk, if you want, Joe can talk a little bit about what it looks like adding fixed assets, what the process we set up looking like this. One thing I can tell you is that if you're a beta user of this product, we're tired of just hearing my ideas and Joe's ideas. And so we've got staff here, Eric and the team are coming up with ideas as well, but we really are excited about bringing in other people that would say, hey, what about this? What about this? Because so far, these are the ideas that we've come up with. And so that's, if you see here, I've got a submit feedback button that will not be there when we go to market, and you put the subject in. This creates an alert on our program manager's desktop. It doesn't go through customer support in some other part of the planet. It's going to go right here in Dallas, Texas to Sarah, our product manager. She's going to work on getting that answer back to you guys. That feature will not be when we go live. You may provide support, but it's going to look a lot like the other, submit feedback, but that's something we're building into here because we want to connect with you guys. We met with our initial beta firm yesterday. Joe and Eric and I went over and talked about these connection issues and what that's going to look like next. And that's because if finding out from you guys what you want, that's what we're really excited about the beta program, what that could look like. Adding a firm that's got recent audit experience is something we're really excited about, because I know enough to be dangerous, but it literally has been since the 90s since I actually did one. So
that's That's great. No, I think, in my opinion, you may want to just keep this all the time. You know, collaboration and feedback is really going to help thrive the innovation. And so, what do we want to say here to everyone? We are at the end of the session today. We do want to thank everyone so much for being here. Again, we'll be able to reach out for CP for all the folks that are eligible for that. Again, we're going to have the ability to share this recording as well as the presentation along with all of our information, so you can get set up with direct demos to dive deeper in and look at the integrations and play around with the system much more. But with that said, we thank you all so much for spending the time here.
Let me, I thought that our last screen, let me give you a couple of real quick email addresses if you guys would like to get a demo set up, that you can connect with. Will is our CPA experience manager, director, and so he is Will at BaCo, like bacon without a N, BaCoTech.com. And Caitlin is is in charge of all communications. She's handling a lot of sales, running a lot of the front end demos. That's Caitlin, Kaitlyn at BaCoTech.com. Shoot those guys an email. Let them know you'd like to see a little bit more in the demo. Some of the things we were able to do last year to see what that looked like, and find out what it looked like to join us. This first class of beta users comes on board.
Right, yeah. Well, we'll make it easy for everyone. We'll send out the emails to everyone that signed up, so that way you have that information of those emails. You can reach out to everyone. So thank you so much, BaCo Tech, and us here at Sage. We're so privileged and honored to have your time today. And again, thank you for Joe, Caitlin, and Will for all your time and investment in this. And we're excited to see what this comes for the innovation of the profession. So with that said, we're going to close it out. And again, if you guys have any more questions, we'll send you all those emails and the assets, and we look forward to hearing from everyone. Have a great rest of your week.